All right. Greetings and blessings to you in the name of the Lord Jesus. Everybody have a good night. I slept so good last night. I don't normally sleep that well in a hotel, and I woke up at 5 a.m. and I was thinking, do I stay up? Because that's 6 a.m. where we live, and that's normally when I get up. And I felt so relaxed. I said, I'm going to go back to sleep. And so I had to set my clock on my phone, and the phone woke me up. So I'm glad that I was able to set that clock. Or I would have been late. And I normally don't sleep late. Well, we just bless you in the name of the Lord and thank God for you and all that He is doing here in this region and territory. We appreciate Him so much. And I appreciate Pat and the work that he's doing here and the seeds that have been sown. Now, when seeds are sown, they don't, sometimes they have a destination point that they have to reach before they begin to flourish. As I shared with you last night about the angels there in Moravian Falls, and when I first heard, this is the first time, actually, let me rephrase this, first time I heard them talking in their language. And I had never seen a lot of angels. Occasionally I'd see one. I saw angels in 1993 in my dream, and they came into an office I was in and picked me up and carried me across what I know now as time. And I asked them, I said, where are we going? And they said, this is to prepare you for the days that are ahead. And I asked them a second time as we continued on this journey, and where are we going? This is to prepare you for the days that are ahead. And they took me into this huge, huge mansion. They called it a little house. It was anything but little. It was huge. And they took me inside, and when I got inside, the setup inside this building was exactly like the United Nations in New York City. And there was people in there from every nation, tribe, and tongue in this room. And there was one vacant seat all the way down as you would come in on the right side on the front. And they took me and they set me right there. When they set me there, Jesus came in the same door I just came into with black hair. He didn't have a gate like you and I have a gate. He kind of flowed across as he came down the aisle that I had just come down. And he came over to where I was sitting. And he gets in front of me and he cocks his head like this. And he said, well, what did you expect? And I said, I don't know. And he said, this is to prepare you for the days that are ahead. And he turned and waved his hand, and I fell out of my chair in holy laughter. The whole place, everybody, fell out of their seats in holy laughter. This was in August of 1993 when that dream took place. I prayed into it, and there was more to the dream than what I'm telling you. I prayed into it. I said, Lord, what does this mean? And different points in life between 93 and 2007, I thought, well, that's what that dream means. But no, I was missing it all along. And then in 2007, on October 24th, 2007, we were in our church facility that I pastored then, about the size of this. And we were having prayer meeting on Wednesday night. Now, most people had quit coming on Wednesday night because I turned it into a prayer meeting. They called it prayer meeting, but nobody ever prayed. And so I turned it into a real prayer meeting. And, those who wanted to hear our speaker decided to stay home. So we're in there praying away, and we're just kind of plowing and sowing seed and plowing and sowing seed. And all of a sudden, the atmosphere shifted in the room. And the two angels that I saw in the dream in 1993 walked into the room, and I'm looking at them just like I'm looking at you right now. And my spirit starts talking to them. I'm not moving my mouth, but my spirit's talking. And my spirit says, what are you doing here? They were the same angels from the dream in 93. And they said, we're here to help you transition. Well, I knew I'd been in a transitioning place a long time. And that one moment began to change the way that I think about angels and angelic beings and their work among us that God has called them to do, and how many times, as I said last night, they're waiting on us to get to certain places and at certain seasons and times so that they can be activated. And so about 2 weeks later, this was on October 24th, 2007, so we're into November, and I'm going through my calendar. I keep a paper calendar. I don't like electronic calendars because my Palm Pilot crashed on me one time and I lost everything in it. So I went back to paper. So I'm looking through there, make sure we had done everything that we're supposed to do on that calendar, and I come to October 24th, 2007. Now every year, that date is United Nations Day. Now remember, they took me in a room that was exactly like the United Nations. What the Lord was saying through that whole dream and that event, you're now shifting into a new place and seat of authority. See, the Lord has seats of authority for us that most of us never enter into. We never go and sit down in those seats. We just go through a normal Christian life. And so that began changing my paradigm about angels and what angels do. Tim Sheets has some tremendous books, and he's seen far more angels than I have. And Pat sees them all the time. It's something that we don't need to worship, but we need to begin to understand that the Lord has given angels assigned to us, not just guardian angels, but angels of ministry, angels of government. Tim talks about governmental angels all the time. He'll talk about awakening angels, revival angels. Clay talks about having a dream about the justice gate angel. And so I began having different thinking about this. And then in 2020, I don't remember the dates, I believe it was around the 1st of October, we had gone to Moravian Falls. I have a group of people it's called the Air Force, H-E-I-R. And these are sons and daughters that God's given to Cheryl and I through the years. And it's not like joining a church. I pick who's a part of this. So you can't join it. It's like Jesus, he picked his disciples. I found that fascinating. He picked his disciples, but he didn't pick everybody. And so that's kind of the way I do this. And so we went for the first time to Moravian Falls. I've been wanting to go for years. And it had been a long, long day. I was tired. Our whole team, the Air Force, stayed up in the Apple Hill Lodge. And Cheryl and I had a cabin off to ourselves called the Angel Cabin. And so it was about 9:30 at night. I was exhausted, so physically exhausted. My body was hurting. And so I said, let's go get in the cabin. Everybody's here. So we go get in the cabin and we get into bed. Cheryl, she falls asleep any place, anytime, anywhere. You know, she just falls asleep in a heartbeat. I'm sitting there, my body's aching and hurting. And I tell the Lord, I said, Lord, I do not want any visitations tonight. Never tell him what to do. And I'm laying there trying to go to sleep, and I feel like somebody's watching me. I feel like I'm being watched. What's going on here? I was about to wake her up and say, let's go. I don't want to stay here. We're being watched. And the next thing I know, I started hearing conversations, angelic conversations, as I shared last night, like it is in Cracker Barrel on a Sunday afternoon after church, and thousands of people are talking loud. That's the way it was. You just hear it over, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And I knew that I had stepped into another dimension, or sleeping, trying to get to sleep in another dimension. And finally, two of them, I couldn't understand what they said because they have their own language. I'm laying in the bed, and two of them are right beside the bed. And they start talking to one another, and they said, "He's here." And the other one said, "He's finally arrived." I learned something in that God is waiting on you and I to get to a place that He has assigned for us that's going to revolutionize and change your life. He's always waiting for us to get there to that place. And when we get there, there is usually an encounter of some type waiting on us. So we went several years. Somebody was asking me this morning, did I have encounters every time I went? No. I had 2 encounters with the enemy while I went there. And you may think, well, why would the enemy be in a place that's supposed to be so filled with angels? Well, that's why. They're going to show up anywhere there is angelic activity taking place and happening. People are moving forward. The enemy wants to keep you from moving forward. But I've had 4 times where I had significant encounters. And so in May of 25, the end of May, I think it was the 29th, we go and, we go and we're staying there. And that night, the first night there, I hear angels singing for the first time in my life. And they're singing the joy. It was the most beautiful music you could ever hear, but I couldn't understand a word they said. But it was like thousands were singing. And then they stopped singing after about 10 minutes, and they began talking again, just like they did the first time in 2020. I heard them talking. They talked for another 10 minutes. I asked the Lord, I said, what are they talking about? He said, they're talking about you. Now, you need to understand that too, because angels, if you will tap into the spiritual realm, angels are talking about you all the time. Matter of fact, when you have conversations about the Lord with one another, it's being recorded in heaven, the things that you're saying. So that really empowered me hearing them sing for the first time. So I go home after that. On July 7th, go ahead and put that up there, the first one. On July 7th, I start having a dream that I had never thought I was going to have. And it's about the Florida Prayer Mountain. And our foundation for this is Isaiah 2:2-3. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on top of the mountain and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. Many people will come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord." Next slide, please. So, in the first dream I've had about the Florida Prayer Mountain, I had gone to Moravian Falls. I had lunch with some friends that used to live in Florida but now live in Moravian Falls. And I start making a track up the hill to go to Prayer Mountain. Now, I would never walk this because it's like this. Your car even strains trying to get up the mountain. And so, but I'm walking this mountain, and I get up to the top, and I transition into a multi-level heavenly building. AI did a good job in putting that together. To ask the Lord for permission for a prayer mountain in Florida. And I don't know who escorted me into that place, but it reminded me a lot of what John, the voice that came to John said, "After this I looked, behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice I heard addressing me like the calling of a war trumpet said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must take place in the future.'" And then the dream ended. It ended with me asking for permission for a Florida Prayer Mountain. Go to the next slide, please. Second dream is on September 7th, exactly 2 months to the day. And in this dream, I go up Prayer Mountain, and as I'm going up Prayer Mountain, there is a checkpoint, just like you would have to present your passport to TSA when you're coming back into the country or going to another country, I had to stop and I had to present my belt to two angels that were under the porch of this cabin just before you get to Anna Roundtree's house. And so I handed them my belt, as you see there. Next slide. And the next thing I know, my belt expanded in girth to 7 inches. And I knew that the Lord was talking to me about the belt of truth that is girt about our loins. Ephesians 6:14, stand therefore having fastened on the belt of truth. That's what the belt looks like in the spiritual realm. And so I realized that the Lord was inspecting the truth that is around my loins. He probably would like to do that with all of us, to get us in right alignment for what He wants to do in this day and in this hour. So that's the second dream. The third dream came the same night. Next slide, please. So in the third dream, I am staying at the Morning Star Lodge, and I decide I'm going to walk over to the Apple Hill Lodge and see what's going on there. I walk over to the Apple Hill Lodge, and there's probably 50 or 60 people inside. A lot of talking, a lot of celebration going on. And a guy I know walks up to me. He lives there in Moravian Falls. He hands me a business card. It's the half size of a normal business card. And he says, we're starting a new church. Are you interested? And I wasn't interested in doing anything, starting a new church. I've already got a church. I don't need to start a new one. And so I wasn't interested, so I left. Well, when I left and walked out the door, I found myself climbing a sheer cliff like El Capitan at Yosemite. And I realized I couldn't do this alone, that I was going to have help. And as I'm realizing this, a hand reaches down from above, just like you see there, and grabs my wrist. Boy, that's a big hand. He's grabbed my whole wrist and hand and everything, and begins pulling me up to the summit of the prayer mountain. And I knew the Lord was saying, you can't do this by yourself. And this is why many of us come short, because we try to do these things that God's called us to by ourselves. We're very independent-minded, and we want to do things by ourselves instead of enlisting the help. And I knew that from this dream also I was going to need the Lord's help, but also was going to need the help of the ecclesia in the earth. And so this was the third dream on September 7th. Had 2 dreams that night about the Florida Prayer Mountain. Next slide, please. So in this dream, the fourth dream, took place September 28, 2025. Dutch and I are driving through Florida in a big, luxurious van. Why we were in a van, I don't know. It should have been a monster truck or something like that. But we were in a huge van, and it was very luxurious. We're driving around Florida, and we come to Sarasota. And I mentioned to Dutch, I said, this is where Brian Gibbs' church is. You've met Brian, I'm sure, haven't you? And I said, he's going gangbusters here, really moving forward. And so Dutch pulls into a strip mall, and Brian Gibbs steps off the curb, comes to the door of our van, and Dutch is driving, and he's talking to me and talking to Dutch. He's a very energetic guy. He's like an Energizer bunny, ready to go. He's one of those people who don't need coffee because they're very energetic. And so I'm not talking about anybody here, I don't think. But anyway, lo and behold, I found out, I didn't know this, that Brian's church is in a strip mall. So we left there, we went to Fort Myers, and these are the Fort Myers people right here. We went to Fort Myers, and I showed Dutch in Fort Myers 13 acres of land that I had thought about buying. But I told him, I said, it's not us, it just doesn't fit. Because it was filled with thorns and tares. This is what I said in the dream. Thorns, tares, and weeds. That's important for Fort Myers, especially the intercessors, to grab that. Because tares and weeds can be removed by angels. You can't remove them. But if you go and read the parable about the tares and the wheat, they can be removed. And this is why you haven't been able to find a place. This is why the harvest has not come in Fort Myers, because the harvest can't come in until the angels come and pull the weeds out. So you need to, in Fort Myers, you need to dispatch angels to come and remove the tares and the thorns and thistles in that region so that the harvest can come in. Can't come in until that's removed. And that's one of the reasons. I haven't been to Fort Myers to speak in at least 15 years. I'm going to be in Bonita Springs. I'm going to be in Cape Coral, but that's not Fort Myers. And so as you go back now, you go back with new ammunition that we've got to dispatch the angels, release them into that territory so that that territory can bring forth the harvest that God has for it. And I actually, about 3 months ago, had a Zoom meeting with the intercessors in Fort Myers to tell them about this dream, because I felt like they needed to know what the Lord wants to do there and what they can do to get those tares out of the way. So then in that dream, Dutch and I, we drive and we wind up on what I know now to be the property of the Florida Prayer Mountain. And we're sitting on a wooden fence. And at this point, even in the natural, I had not told Dutch about the other dreams. This is the fourth dream. I've not told him about the other three dreams. So in the dream, I tell Dutch about the other three dreams while we're sitting on the fence. And he says to me, you need to do this, but don't start a church. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to start a church. I am going to have a functioning ecclesia, but it's not going to be a traditional church. We're not going to have counseling. We're going to have impartation and equipping and training, but no counseling. I'm not a counselor anyway. And that's another story for another time. You don't want me to counsel you. I have a pillow in my office. Pat's probably seen it. And it's sitting right there. I have a nice couch, pillow on it, and it says, "Suck it up, Buttercup." That's the way I counsel. So I realize now that this whole thing is progressing, and God's wanting to do this in Florida. So we begin praying into it. And then I have the fifth dream, the fifth and final dream, but not the final encounter with the Lord. So go to that next slide, please. She's got it there. So and I don't know who this lady is. AI picked this lady out. I have no clue who she is. And so in the fifth dream, I'm standing on the property of the Florida Prayer Mountain, and this intercessor comes up, and she's carrying an orchid, a purple orchid. And she says, I want to place this on the Florida Prayer Mountain. And I said, well, the best place to put an orchid is in the fork of an oak tree. I said that in the dream. I didn't know that that's where orchids love to grow. Is in trees down in Florida anyway. I had no clue. And so, go to the next slide, please. So she takes the orchid, puts it in the fork of the oak tree in the dream. Next slide, please. And the next thing I know, when she sets it in there, the orchid just begins to flourish. I mean, immediately. And just grows all the way down to the ground. And I feel like that the Lord is saying that this is what the Florida Prayer Mountain is going to look like. It's going to be a place that's going to be flourishing. It's going to be a well-watered garden, just like the scripture says. And that was the last dream. And so I kept praying into this over and over again, praying into the dreams. I took the dreams and I broke them down in certain categories of intercession and prayer. I took the first dream and prayed through that and had different bullet points to pray, making the track, making the journey. You're journeying to the prayer mountain in Moravian Falls, but your purpose is to ask for permission. So, a year goes by, and we go back to Moravian Falls. First night we're there, I have a significant dream about the county we live in, and I'm not going to go into that. The next day, we go to Anna Roundtree's house. Now, on Saturday mornings, if you ever go there, be sure and go to her prayer meeting at 9:30 a.m. But get there at 8:30 and get in line. Otherwise, you won't have a place to sit, because she can hold about 50 people. And when we were there on June the 6th, it was full. People had to stand because they couldn't get another person in. Anna, I love the way she does things. She has two big bouncers, two men, and they're on the outside telling you as you come in. When you come in, you can pray, you can prophesy, but you can't talk and you can't preach. I like that. I like that order. I like that authority. So we start that morning. Anna starts it up praying, and she does this every time. She said, the Bible teaches us to pray for those who are in authority. And so she starts praying that. And then she opens it up for anybody else who wants to pray or prophesy. And so a few people begin praying. Jessica, one of the people with us, she prays. Another person, Wendy, prays. Somebody I don't know begins to pray also. And then I said, well, I'm going to pray. And so I just started praying. I opened up praying for the prodigals. And as I'm praying for the prodigals, I feel my spirit move into that third dimension building that I showed you the first dream. Moved in there, in that dream, in that third dimension that I had about the first dream. And I started weeping, and I started asking God. I said, Father, I ask for permission for a prayer mountain in the state of Florida. And I really know that it was granted. We leave there. When we leave there, we go have lunch that night. We meet and we have, a time of worship together and a time of ministering to one another. Go to bed. Go to the next slide, please. We go to bed, and at 1:30 a.m. that night, I wake up, and this is in the ceiling of the room that we're in. Now, AI constructed this for me, but that was what was on the ceiling. And at first, I thought it was a maze. And I said, what is this? And I kept looking, and then I realized it's Hebrew. And I had been studying Hebrew, especially this word. It's the Hebrew word. Anybody know what that is? It's the Hebrew word for Yahweh. And so I was blown away. And then once I realized what it was, it disappeared. So I go back to sleep. Now, at this point, I'm starting to get a little bit used to these encounters and visitations. So I go back to sleep. I wake up at 5:30. Next slide, please. I wake up at 5:30 a.m., and this is in the ceiling. The number 4, that blue background, 5 trees, a house, and a cross is there. What is this? And I realize it's the Florida Prayer Mountain. As I'm watching this, I'm amazed at what's going on. And there's another slide. I didn't put it in here. I took a picture. And I took a picture, and there's 2 red eyes in the ceiling. All you see is the darkness, and there are 2 red eyes looking down at me. I call them the fiery eyes of the Revelation 19 writer. He had fire in his eyes. And so this happened at 5:30 a.m., and I woke up and I started telling everybody what I had discovered. And a friend of ours, one of our spiritual daughters, and she's there. She's a realtor. And oh, by the way, I didn't tell you this. When I went in the first dream, when I went to Moravian Falls to ask for permission for a Florida Prayer Mountain on US 1. Forgot to tell you that. So Lauren begins looking in her area, Brevard County, for a property on US 1. And she finds a place. Now, the next night, on the 8th, the morning of the 8th, go to the next slide, please. I have another vision. This is about 3 a.m. And in this vision, it is a framed picture. You guys got to go to Prayer Mountain in Moravian Falls. You're going to see and experience things you've never, because I've never experienced anything like this. You've got to go. Forget Florida, go to Moravian Falls. and so this picture's on the wall. It's a standalone lamp, an end table with a philodendron on it. I didn't know as when I had this vision, I didn't know that was a philodendron. I had to look it up. And so, but as this picture dissipated, another picture was birthed out of it. The next slide, please. The next picture was an end table with a terracotta vase on it. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on here? What are you trying to show me? So I show everybody this the next day. Well, we get back home, and Lauren says, we got to go look at this house. I want you to come look at this house and tell me when you can go. I'm going to call the realtor and set up a date where we can go. And so we set the date and we go to the house. Now, I was showing pictures from the realtor's website, and I found out that I could be sued for doing that, and so I took them down. I had them on Facebook and everywhere, and I took them down. So, but when we get there, we go inside, and we get inside, and sitting in the den is an end table with a standalone lamp on it, but no philodendron. And as I'm looking at this, I realized this is the place. And I said to the Lord, where's the philodendron? He says, you're going to put it there. I looked on the other side of the den, and the standalone end table didn't have a vase on it, but it was there by itself. And so a couple of weeks later, we're in our den at home, and Cheryl says she has all kind of vases on the floor. Jugs that you could fill up with oil or whatever, water. She said, there's your vase right there on the floor. She said, you're going to put that on the table. Well, I realize now we know exactly where it is. 7 acres of land. I call them God's 7 acres. And so we come out of the house, and I'm looking around the house, and on the front of the house, remember the cross? Is a cross nailed on the front of the house. I knew God was talking about this. This is the place. This is a place that's going to be a prayer mountain that changes not only Florida, but it's going to change the whole nation. I believe there's going to be prayer mountains all across this nation. You're going to see people raising up prayer mountains, places where people can come and enter into the presence of the Lord, like at Moravian Falls. Did you know the Moravian? Let me tell you about the Moravians, because I'm going to talk about them in a minute. The Moravians started a prayer meeting in the 1700s in Herrnhut, Germany. They were very persecuted, and a man by the name of Count Zinzendorf took them in, gave them 400 acres of land, and they began building there, and they started having 24/7 prayer meeting. They had a prayer meeting every hour. 2 people were praying around the clock. Now get this, for 110 years. This went on. 6 months after they began that prayer, God put it in their heart for some of them to become missionaries. And they came to the United States. They actually built Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I got to go there. I haven't been there yet. They built that. They also came and built Salem, North Carolina. Today it's called Winston-Salem. They also built Moravian Falls. And so I begin to see how this 110-year plan that the Lord had was passed through the generations that has impacted Moravian Falls so powerfully that it is said to be the most visited place by angels with the exception of the Mount of Olives in Israel. And it's because these people prayed for 110 years. Can you imagine what will happen if we start praying around the clock? I was looking at Acts 12 the other day, and where Peter was thrown into prison and James was killed and beheaded, and then the church began to pray, the Bible says, without ceasing. They begin to pray without ceasing, and all of a sudden an angel shows up in Peter's jail cell. Now get this, Peter has chains on both of his arms, and those chains are chained to guard on each side of him. And those chains fall off. The guards stay asleep. There's 2 guards outside the door, and those guards are asleep, and the door opens up, and Peter is delivered. You know the story. Winds up at the house where they're having the prayer meeting, knocking on the door. Woman opens the door and thinks it's Peter's ghost. Slams the door. Peter keeps knocking until they say, "Hey, it's me." But what I'm getting at, the point I'm getting at is what happens when we have continual prayer going on. We don't really realize how powerful that actually is. Next slide, please. So, on July 22nd, we're in the prayer embassy at our church. We have a place, a room about this size. You've been in there. And he actually has led prayer there during our conferences. And we were praying, and I went off into the spirit realm. And I started seeing a vision of this man right here. Anybody know this man? Benjamin Franklin. Just had watched him in the Great Awakening movie. And this man, when I see this vision, I immediately begin speaking in tongues. And he's writing a check out for the Florida Prayer Mountain. You see the amount there. That's what it's going to cost to get the property. And so I immediately began praying in tongues, and I was interpreting the tongues. Now, 3 times, write the check, write the check, write the check. He's also on our $100 bill. And so I asked the Lord, I said, why is this colonialist showing up here at the prayer embassy and writing a check? Why is this great cloud of witnesses and writing a check for the Florida Prayer Mountain? See, I believe that the cloud of witnesses interact in our realm. We just don't know it. The writer of Hebrews in Hebrews 12:1 says we're surrounded by the great cloud of witnesses. They're all around us. They're in this room right now. All around us. And so I pray into this, and I start decreeing, Benjamin, write that check. Write that check. Write that check. And then on August the 1st, next slide, please. I'm in Winter Haven, Florida. Dutch and I had just finished a meeting on the July 31st, staying in a friend's house, and I have this dream at 5:30. And there's a colonialist looking into the double glass doors of the Florida Prayer Mountain. I'm on the inside as I'm looking at in this dream. And he's leaned over looking like this. And I'm thinking, even while I'm having the dream, what's he doing here? Why is there colonialists here? Next slide, please. And then he disappears. Notice the aura around them. They all had an aura around them. This woman appears dressed in 1700s attire. I'm thinking, what in the world is she doing here? And then next slide, please. I begin to see in the same dream a Native American woman, and she's braiding the hair of her daughter who's 6 or 7 years old. And then the dream stops. Just since I've been here, he and I were talking about this. So on the way up here, I was watching a movie on the screen there in the airplane. And they had a documentary of Ben Franklin, and I started watching it. And I said, I'm really interested in knowing about this guy, and I'm going to study him some more. He was a huge philanthropist, loved helping people, loved doing things for the betterment of mankind. And so I'm looking at pictures, I'm reading about him, and it dawns on me, if you could back up to that first guy right there, it dawns on me that this man, this woman are Moravians. They came to America, went into Pennsylvania in 1740, just the time of the Revolution, just before the Revolution. That these are Moravians who were called to be missionaries to the colonists and to the Native Americans. Any more slides? Let's go all the way down. Next one. There's a rendition of what we think the Florida Prayer Mountain is to look like. And, it'll take a lot of work and a lot of money. But God's got all the money. And he put it in the pockets of his people. And so notice that it's on US 1. And this property that we found is on US 1. By the way, it has a white fence going all around this property. And so we're tapping into something. Go to the next slide. There's 3 ways that you can help. You can pray, you can give, and you can serve. All 3 of those ways. We need the prayer, especially, to see this take place and happen. If you can't give, you can pray into what the Lord wants to do. You can say, Father, send them the money. You can also give, but you can also serve. Because once we get this thing going, we're going to need a lot of help. But the Lord told me in the 3rd dream, help is on the way. Help is on the way. So that's the 3 ways that you can help us accomplish this. And once this thing is functioning, I want you to come and just sit in the presence of the Lord. Amen. Last slide. Guess who's texting me? Jane Hammond. I'll get to you later. So you can partner with the mission if you so desire to do so today. You can partner with the mission. There's the QR codes for credit card and for Cash App. You make checks to Forerunner Ministries. Pat's got envelopes here if you want an envelope. Maybe you don't want to give today, but you might want to give later on. You can take an envelope, just raise your hand and they'll get an envelope to you. You can also give by credit card on that envelope. And if you have any questions about the Florida Prayer Mountain or about Moravian Falls, this would be a good time to ask. One of the things that we did that was so cool, this was about the 2nd time we went with our spiritual sons and daughters. The Lord said to us, I want you to take them to the falls and baptize them in the mantle of the Moravians. And so we made a trip. You know, the children of Israel, when they crossed through the Red Sea, were baptized into Moses, the Bible says. And so we baptized everyone. We've had 3 baptisms there. We baptized everyone into the mantle of the Moravians. And I feel like that one of the things I feel, we're setting this up legally right now. We got it a company with attorneys and CPAs that are working with us to set it up where it will be passed down through the generations so that 110 years from now it's still going. That's the whole plan. And so that's being set up right now. It'll have its own nonprofit entity. But if you got a question, I know you raised your hand. Somebody raised their hand. There's no mountains in Florida. Thank you. That's a good question. Because I've had a lot of people say, well, there's no mountains in Florida. Well, the Lord, He's really not looking for a physical mountain. This is the mountain of the Lord. It'll be a mountain in the spiritual realm. Like Isaiah 2:2-3. That's our foundational scripture for this. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of our God. And so, yeah, it's flat. But I will say this about where it is. For that area, it's high. It's high for that area. There's some areas of Mims that when hurricane comes through, it's underwater. There are houses underwater. But this unless there's a tsunami that comes through the Atlantic, and it's not going to happen, this will never get underwater. It's too high. Anybody have any questions about Florida Prayer Mountain or Moravian Falls? No. If you remember, I said when we get this, yeah, when we purchase this, it'll go into, yeah, and I will give you the address if you want to drive by there. Just don't drive up on the property and talk to the owner, and because they'll freak out. They've already freaked out because they found out what we're wanting to do there. That's okay. I think when we put that fat check in front of them, they're going to quit freaking out. Okay. Where? Okay. Yeah, I know where it is. Good. Wow. Oh, they grow huge down there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've got to get a purple orchid in your oak tree in this stair row. The next time I'm down that way, I'll let you know, and we're going to go to Ted's Montana Grill. It's a good place to eat. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions about the Florida Prayer Mountain or Moravian Falls? I'll try to answer it. Where? I've been there in the summer when it's terribly hot. I've been there first weekend of October, which was real comfortable. When we were there last June, the beginning of June, it was just right. It was about like you have here right now. So it was just right. And I've been there when it was cold. I went one year in March, and I wanted to go up to Prayer Mountain and pray. This is before I had all the dreams, and I didn't pack a good enough coat. I had one, but it wasn't good enough, and it was cold up there. So I would say, check your weather. I would say April or May, beginning of October. If you wait to later in October, you're going to hit the leaves change, and it's going to be very crowded up there. But again, if you go there and you're there on a Saturday, go to Anna Roundtree's meeting. You can look her up online. Roundtree doesn't have a D in it. It's Rountree. And go to her prayer meeting. Now, she's 91 years old now. And but she's just as sharp as a tack. So I'd encourage you to go to that. It's very powerful, very moving. You can tell you're in the spiritual realm when you go to her prayer meeting. Anybody else? All right, let's pray. Father,